Get started in about 30 seconds here while you find your seats. A few reminders. If you would like to speak at the end of the meeting, towards the end of the meeting, please fill out your public comments and concerns card, which should be in the main lobby, and you can bring it up here to the commissioner of your choice, or Ms. Pennington, and she'll see that I did it. Also, just want to remind you to silence your cell phones. Board members, go ahead and silence yours on down. Don't let your vibrate go off either of you. Exactly. For those, the time is now 6 p.m. and this is the regularly scheduled session of the Board of County Commissioners for the County of Suwannee. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you here, and I think tonight I'm going to call on impromptu. Mr. Harris, would you lead us in the invocation of pledge?
Let us pray. Father, we praise you and we thank you for your love and your mercy and your kindness. We thank you for the opportunity to come here this evening and serve the public. We ask that you give us all wisdom, guidance, and counsel from above. We ask that you give us patience with one another. Father, we ask that you watch over our military personnel and their families, bless them mightily and abundantly. Watch over each of us. We just praise you. We thank you again for your love. That you prevail upon this meeting, that we serve the best interest of the public. Praise you in Jesus' name.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Again, we'd like to welcome one and all here this evening to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. Moving right into our agenda this evening, we have the approval of minutes of our last regularly scheduled board meeting. Board members, are there any changes or corrections that need to occur for that meeting's minutes?
I have none, Mr. Chairman. I'll offer a motion of approval.
Second.
Motion to approve made by Commissioner Wainwright, seconded by Commissioner Gamble. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving into the consent agenda part of our session this evening. Gentlemen, are there any items that you would like to pull at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull number 3 just for comment.
Okay. Item number 3 has been pulled for consideration. Are there any others? Gentlemen, I need a motion for items 2, 4, and 5.
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve items 2, 4, and 5 by Commissioner Gamble, seconded by Commissioner Wainwright. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, let me interrupt. Number 4, the word consider, is that not the same as discuss? Is that something that y'all were supposed to speak on or something?
Apparently nobody
That's the
wants
wrong
to
word.
speak about it.
There's a motion on the floor for items 2, 4, and 5. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. I think that in regard to the comment that was made on item 4, I think that if we had already considered it, probably it was an oversight.
Yes,
Appreciate you
I'm sorry
pointing that out.
for interrupting you like that. My fault.
Thank you. Commissioner Fleming, you pulled item number 3.
Yes.
Any comments?
I just wanted to have a comment on, I talked with the sheriff a couple weeks ago,
Yes.
and he told me that the inmate was supplied the work to be done to the bathrooms, the restrooms at the Douglas Center. There would be 3 labeled. Warden Landrum told him that the inmates would go out and do all the work to be done, but the county would have to buy it supplies, like block and everything like that. And also, he called me today about, and he set aside the $25,000 for the flooring. He's going to have $5,000 left over, and that $5,000 that's left over we want to give it to the board for some repairs to be done on the floor, that, front foyer, and to the little office that's out there.
Okay, he's gonna, we have to reappropriate those funds for that purpose?
Right, just give it back, you know, he said he allotted 25,000 for the floor,
Right, correct,
so 5 be left.
right.
You want that 5 to go toward that.
Okay. Well, just, get the staff on that, and we'll put it on a future agenda if we need to do anything with it. I think that's amicable to the board.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have, and I offer motion that approve it.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve made by Commissioner Fleming. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Sessions. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, moving into our constitutional officers item section of the agenda. There was no items requested to be placed on the agenda this time, but if there are any constitutional officers that wish to speak this evening, please stand now and address the board. Hearing none, we'll move on to proclamations and presentations. There were none requested to be placed on the agenda. We have one specific item, time-specific item this evening, but we'll move on through into commissioners' items until 6:30 p.m., at which time we'll consider that item number 6, that is. Commissioners, do you have any items that you wish to add to the agenda at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to county attorney items. Mr. Attorney, do you have anything you wish to address the board about?
Well, yes, sir, I do. Nothing to be agendaed, but we did look at, and we commented on last week that there was an adopted policy for the sale of surplus property. And in fact, there was one that was adopted years ago, in 2005. The ordinance itself basically just follows the state statute like we talked about before, to be able to offer it for surplus, and it's just the same thing, over again. Still got to go through the process of, declaring a surplus, and then there's 2 different avenues to be able to, to sell it. So I wanted to let you know that there was such a policy adopted. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Zach.
The only comment I have on that is I'd love to go ahead and move forward with that. If we could have something on the next agenda, Mr. Harris, with regard to the sale of surplus, declaring some of these properties surplus, is that?
That's the plan.
Okay.
We're preparing the summaries on each property.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on into general business, item number 7, if you're following along on your agenda. Discuss with possible board action entering into a 2-year lease agreement with Ring Power of Lake City for 5 dump trucks. This is a budgeted item. Randy Harris, County Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the reason we didn't put this on the consent was because of the question that some had asked regarding had it been 2 years yet. It will be 2 years on trucks that we have now in August, but we have to order these trucks way in advance in order to obtain them in August. So the company has indicated this is the time to go ahead and do that. We've experienced that in past graders where we ordered them at the beginning of the fiscal year, didn't get them until 5 months later. So that's the reason it's on here now. We'll take possession in August. At the end of the existing lease.
Gentlemen, what are the wishes of the board?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Wainwright, seconded by Commissioner Fleming. Is there any discussion from the board?
All this does is just place an order, but then we take possession at the end of our current lease. And this lease here is basically the exact same lease as the one that we're in now, isn't it?
The terms are the same.
The same, that's what I'm saying, same terms, pretty much same price. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Gamble.
Are the mics turned on?
Mr. Ham? Oh, you just have a problem hearing? Can you hear me?
Couldn't hear Randy at all.
Can you hear me? Okay, well, we can-
It's always a problem.
The terms of the lease, of the lease are the same as the existing lease that we have.
Yeah. I just wondered if your mic was turned on, because we're not hearing you.
It says it is.
Got a green light.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to number 8 on your agenda, discuss with possible board action amendment to section 4.02 of personnel rules and regulations regarding health insurance. Randy Harris, County Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, actually, the county attorney participated significantly in evaluating the options that we have and amending our personnel rules and regulations. And I've spoken to some of you regarding specific questions on the options that we have. The first, and I'll cover these briefly, and then you can ask questions of the county attorney if you wish. But option 1 that we have is to allow employees to opt out of county health coverage and offering them a cash benefit of a specified amount per month. If we do so, that would be taxable income, and it would be not only taxed, but we'd have to cover all of the other expenses that we incur as an employer. Option 2, considerably different, and rather than read all through this, I'll just state that if an employee were to opt out of the county's health insurance, they could obtain insurance in a group, some other group, and they could obtain then a reimbursement from the county, and it would not be taxable income. Option number three is interesting. Option number 3 would allow employees to opt out and receive a cash benefit, which would be taxable. And in addition, employees who have opted out that obtain health and coverage through another group plan could also receive a premium reimbursement.
Okay.
Now, if you'd like for the county attorney to elaborate on this, he and I had extensive conversation on it, because I had a different idea, at least on number 3, but it wasn't allowed.
Well, my comments, I have quite a few comments on it. I've done some research, and I just want to hear what the balance of the board, if you have any comments on it, I'll let you guys start, and then I'll finish. Hearing none, I guess I'll go.
I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
That's what I was waiting on.
Well, well, that's fine. I think we're gonna hear a bunch of what we've already heard if you called him already. Go ahead for the benefit of the public.
Okay, well, back in 2014, the budget year there, we adopted, the policy 4.02. Well, as it turns out, there came a revenue ruling from the IRS and from the Department of Labor in November of last year. And what it basically said was that the manner in which we were doing reimbursements for employees that went out and obtained individual policies were no longer allowable. You could not reimburse an employee if he went out and obtained coverage on his own. Now, exceptions to that is that the government is trying to force everybody to get into a group plan of some description, and that still remains an exception, and that's why in the policy it has another qualifying non-HRA type group plan. But that's where they're trying to move all of these things to. And in addition, what we were doing was being able to give folks an option of either getting a reimbursement or opting out and getting the plan, getting a payment, a cash benefit, a payment, cash benefit, either or. And they took that away. They said you can't offer them either or. And that's why you have this funny option that is option number 3 that we've come up with, because they said that any employee that opts out would be entitled to a cash benefit if you are going to pay a cash benefit. And if you wanted to pay a reimbursement, you would, and the employee had a policy and could be it was eligible for reimbursement, you'd still have to go back and pay that employee the monies for opting out. So it sounds like it's, you know, getting a double benefit, and basically it is, but right now, the Department of Labor just last month acknowledged that that's a loophole that's right there that they have to go ahead and address, and they'll get it closed up as we move forward. One of the things that's so basically what you boil down to, and instead of having a double monies right there, you basically boil down to either option one, which is pay a sum of monies. They don't have to get coverage. You can't ask them to get coverage. You can't ask them whether they got coverage. And you pay those monies. And then the second option is that you don't pay any cash benefit, and you only do reimbursements for people that get into the appropriate type plan, and then make an appropriate request for reimbursement. There is some question out there whether or not benefits will be taxable. The question really boils down to whether or not, if you are participating in another type plan that is acceptable and is eligible for reimbursement, if those plans are paid, say through your spouse, and the spouse is paid for it through her cafeteria type plan, those are pre-tax dollars that are that she gets to pay the full plan for. Then, when they come in and ask for reimbursement for not the entire amount of it, but what the difference would be, you know, from taking it from her single coverage to your family coverage, that those monies, if she ran it through her cafeteria plan and got the deduction for it, those monies, then the difference would be taxable, or potentially taxable. The ruling right now is that it is not taxable, but they're looking at it again. So when I have the note down here that it says all of those are non-taxable, you have to be careful that some would be fully non and some would be partially taxable. So if we go to the policy, we may want to put in a line in there acknowledging whether or not they were paid with pre-tax dollars or post-tax dollars, to be able to see whether or not whatever reimbursement that we would make would be taxable or non-taxable to the employee. But clearly, you have an option that is either one or two. And if you want to have a combination, you would go to item 3, which would be a double stacking, for this period of time.
Is there a fourth option of being no opt-out clause at all? Like you could either be on the county's policy, or you can opt out and you receive no benefit whatsoever. You just opt out.
Take it or leave it.
Well, you can take it or leave it like that.
Is that an option?
Yes, it's an option.
That's all
You have to offer it. And if you offer it, you're either in or you're out under that circumstance. But I took when we were drafting these options, I took it that there was some interest or continued interest in the board, or as there had been before, of having some type of, monetary substitute, for it. But that is a fourth option. Just, you're either in or you're out.
That's what I do.
Well, just one second, sir. So, do you have anything further to add?
No, sir.
Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
When I look at it, it looks like if you go with the option 2, it's a select few that may receive that benefit from being able to opt out and get reimbursed. It takes anybody that has single individual coverage out of the loop. If you go to option 1, that's a cash benefit fee. Basically, anyone that opts out And I think that's probably the way we should go until October. And the reason I say that is you've got people that cannot get back on your group policy until October. So if you're gonna do take it or leave it, opt out or take our group coverage, nobody can opt back in until October. And that's not a mess that they necessarily created, that's one that handed down to us from the federal government. So that's pretty much all I have to say on it.
Anybody else? Mr. Harris?
I've got lots of things to say about it. One, the reason that we created the opt-out provision was to save taxpayers money with health insurance. That's what it has done since we implemented that. When we created the opt-out provision, we knew that it was cheaper to reimburse an employee who was on a spouse's coverage somewhere, because then we didn't have to pay the entire cost of a full policy if they stayed on the county's health insurance. It was a savings to the taxpayer, and it still is under option 2. This actually started with a policy that was created when I came here and went to work and had a pre-existing condition and kept the health insurance from my previous employer from years ago that cost half of what the policies cost here. That was a savings to the taxpayer. The reason that we never considered, when we created these opt-out provisions a year ago, before the rules changed, because the rules changed after we created these opt-out provisions, but the reason that we never considered just opening it up to everyone as a cash benefit to opt out if they chose to do so was because of the impact to the cost of our insurance premiums. If you say, for instance, that we're going to allow every employee to have an opportunity to just take cash and go shopping, some will. A lot of them won't. But you can bet that our premiums will go up, because the ones that won't go shopping very likely will be the ones that have the highest claims, and they're going to need to stay where they are. And any insurance agent out there that's been working in this business will tell you that your premiums are predicated on claims history, period. That's just the way that it is. There is a volume associated with that, but the volume is actually, the volume that they're interested in is the volume of healthy people. So that is a part of the actual expense associated with your premium. We never considered offering an opt-out provision cash benefit to every employee to just opt out and go shopping, because we knew what would happen. And that's a reality. The board can do what it wishes, but I will say this: a cash benefit, if offered as an opt-out provision, is taxable, and we will pay all of the expenses associated with that. The expense to the county right now that is budgeted in you would have to reduce the actual cash that you end up paying to anyone who opts out by the taxes, by the workers' comp, by retirement, by everything else associated with that, unless there's some provision that allows us to skirt part of that expense. And there may be, I don't know.
Well, you'd have to figure it so that the exact cost of benefits and everything didn't total more than what you were paying for your insurance package. And I don't disagree with you on what you're saying. The only thing I'm saying is you gotta have a way to bridge that gap from now until October. But unless there's another way. But when I called Tyson Johnson's office for the people that would no longer get reimbursed for their coverage now until October, this is not a qualifying change for them to get back onto the group policy.
But we don't have.
I understand there's only a few.
Here's what nobody's brought this up, and I too spoke with Tyson at length over this past week with regard to this. And he says, and he's the expert, that due to the fact that we are reimbursing folks for the current policy, which is against the Affordable Care Act policy or legislation, that we come into violation of that when we are aware of it. Like say, if we become aware of it from that point on, we become liable. Right. So, and that penalty is $100 a day per employee from once the time you become aware of it. So if, say, you became aware of it after January 1st and you didn't implement the change, then it would be $36,500 per employee for that year. So I spoke to him as well about the potential for making the change and what it would mean for those that it affects. And he felt like that if you lose your coverage due to the policy change at your work, there may be some latitude there for some sort of enrollment into something somewhere. I too am concerned for those that it affects by making a change on a dime here and then having these folks out of, basically they have to have a gap in their insurance. So it presents some challenges there.
It's not a gap we created, though, Mr. Chairman.
No, well,
The employee didn't create it either.
but the employee didn't create it now. Here, speaking to option one, this will create what we call a death spiral for our county health coverage, where most of our employees are fairly healthy. If they decide to leave the policy and take the cash payout, we could lose somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60% because they would, in essence, have cash in their pocket. And that would leave the sickest of those on the plan, and then that would cause our health coverage costs to soar. And that is not a good thing to have. So a healthy pool of insureds on the county policy creates a better health care plan for them, as Mr. Harris pointed out. The more healthy people we have not using this and being paid per month gives us more buying power, and it also keeps health care costs low to the county taxpayer. When you go into, say, option 2, which talks about reimbursing somebody who is on the plan of a spouse or another family member or something to that effect, we would have to establish, I guess, what we would pay out to that person. And that, in essence, removes a healthy person, or maybe not a healthy person, from the plan, thus reducing the amount of money that would be thrown at the insurance company, and thus reducing our buying power in health coverage. So it is no secret that when all of this healthcare change occurred within the federal government, that they said in order for healthcare to work, you had to have healthy people on the policies or in the system, paying. And that's no different for the small pool that we have here of over 400 employees with the county. So that's the reason that I brought up the no opt-out coverage, is so that we could maintain good health coverage for all the employees by saying you either opt in or you opt out. And I don't know, I was going to recommend that we not implement this until April 1st or May 1st due to what I found out with regard to the penalty of it. But if the council feels like we can wait till open enrollment, then I don't have a problem with that either. But what is and the other question I had is, if we go with option one, then in our health, our healthcare coverage soars, then what is the federal penalty for not providing coverage to employees? I think it's $3,500 or $4,500 per employee, and that is about a little less than 40%. We pay about 60% of that right now, so it would essentially be a cost savings to the county. But that's not something that I don't think the board wants to consider at this time. So, gentlemen, we have a lot to think about, a lot to talk about, and I just want to know what your thoughts are on it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead. Of the three options that we have listed here, I would rule out option one and option three.
Okay.
That's where I stand.
Thank you, Commissioner Wainwright. What say you?
Mr. Chairman, I also rule 1 and 3 out also.
That brings option 2 to Mr. Sessions. What do you think?
Well, when I was sworn in, I've already got insurance. And so I opted out, not be paid by the county. So, that was my stand. And I don't see why that I need to be paid for something that I don't need from the county. I mean, I don't know let's say $700 a month or what, what's the amount for me?
It's
600.
It's 6 something, but there's nothing that would force you to be. The opt-out provision allowed for employees that wanted to request to be that particular
Reimbursed.
If you wanted to be reimbursed, the provision was there, and we do have some employees that do that, incur the cost, particularly for family coverage.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, family coverage is close to $700 a month. And if a lot of people.
$1,100 a month.
That's what I opted out, was the 1,100. So I don't expect the county to pay me that, even though it would be available to them. I'm for me personally, opt out, and I don't expect anything.
It's only the single benefit that's
Well,
available.
here's the thing, the more insurance you have on there, the more buying power you have with the insurance company. And the more healthy people are on there, the better it is for our insurance company. So, I think that we need to figure out when we have to do this. When does this take effect? Can we wait till open enrollment, or will there be a penalty attached, since we now know that we are in violation for these employees? Or is this something that has to take effect at the end of this month, the following month, or can we wait till open enrollment? And that's a question that I have.
Well, I don't believe that you can wait until open enrollment, which would be, I guess, in October, because when you go in, of course, they look at benefits ahead of time. But you're subjecting yourself to the potential for additional penalties. There is an exception out there right now for employers that employ 50 employees or less. I think they are considering that because of this change, they're considering moving back the deadline for you to do all of this to January of 2016. There's nothing concrete about that yet, but it is under consideration, just like what happened for the smaller employees, to be able to move to it. One of the things you also need to be aware of, that whatever policy you do go with, if you end up with enrollment that falls below 60% of your eligible membership, you won't be eligible for the insurance plan itself. None of the employees would then be eligible, because that's what the floor is required. So I think you need to throw that out there. As for whether or not you'll be penalized or not, again, by the time all of this has to take place in October and later, for any penalties that we may be subject to right now, we may have an exemption from that, already in place by then. Like I said, it's just being considered. It's not in place yet, but just know that it's out there.
So basically, the board would have to make a decision as to whether or not it would want to continue the current practice for another couple months to give people an opportunity to adjust, or wait till open enrollment. That's what the board has to decide.
I think the board has to make a fiscal decision. You're at the point that you know after November that the policy that we have in place is not appropriate. So, we have the potential for being ruled to be out of compliance. If you're out of compliance and you don't have the plan, there in total, or any plan, there is limited fines, like you mentioned. I think, the $3,000 to $4,000. I think it's $3,600 an employee. For all that. But as for the not being in compliance at the $100 per day for each employee, all of that racks up, in a hurry. And what you need to do is look at where it is, what employees, what the number of employees are that are affected, by policy number 2 or 1 for that matter, and make a fiscal decision. The counties that I've seen that have option number 1 and say that their benefit is $600, per month, similar to ours. Well, when you're taking into consideration all of the other items that you have to pay because it is a taxable benefit, the taxable benefit that would be paid to the employees will be greatly reduced. It won't be the $600 a month. It'll be a number closer to $200 or $300 a month at the very, very maximum, and that is, cutting it close. But then when you move into option number 2, option 2 again forces people to be more like what the government intends, to either be in a plan that is a group plan, so that risk is spread out over a greater number of people, but the potential participation, would outside or the opt-out would be less. So again, you're looking at how many will have full participation, in the plan now versus the folks that are currently opt-out. So I think this is, like I said, once you look at 1 or 2, it becomes more of a fiscal decision rather than, a legal decision.
Well, let me ask you this. Nobody can make a change to their policy until open enrollment. If you temporarily adopt number 3 until open enrollment, wouldn't that so-called cure the problem until you could then go back, readdress it, and the ones that couldn't be on the group and be reimbursed could then be back open for open enrollment and move forward?
Well, you have to remember, I think what the biggest concern has been that it's with individual policies. Folks are getting reimbursed for the, and they've gone out and gotten an individual policy. And all of those reimbursements are out, period. Those people that are now participating in those types of plans would not have any benefit under option 2. Their only avenue of being able to have any reimbursement would be under option 1, but it still would not cover all of the expense that they are currently receiving.
No, but it would cover enough, or it would cover more than what they would. It would cover some of the burden that they would have rather than just going with number 2.
Again, it's a fiscal decision saying how many people will be doubled up on because of the number of opt-outs and what that payment would then be. It's going to be, with Mr. Williams here, it's going to be an accounting nightmare in either fashion. Well, at least they're up to date right now on who is opting in and who is opting out and who is getting reimbursements. But if you go to Plan 1 right now, there's a lot of other things that have to be considered, to go through in the clerk's office and whether they're prepared to be able to, be able to do that and handle it right now. And I don't know that answer. I didn't ask Mr. Baker that question or Mr. Williams, but again, it's back to a fiscal decision, if you want to carry it through to the end of the year. Well, it would logically say to me, looking at a number, that if you've been reimbursing somebody a full individual policy, whatever that number may be, and say your individual coverage is $400 a month rather than $600 a month because you bought it somewhere else. If you are going to pay a flat fee, in option 1, you may save money because you'll only be paying a smaller amount to the employee, but you're really not saving money because you're back to paying the full amount, with all the add-ons and everything of a policy, as if they were just going to your 4th option, whether you're in or whether you're out. That would be back to that type of money situation.
So we do have an option 4.
Yeah, we do have an option 4, which is.
It's not written in here, but not that. So what you were saying earlier, you either in or out. Period.
You either in or out, and in talking with Tyson,
given what we've got here to look at, these 3, I looked at it like what council is indicating. From a money side, a fiscal side, from our viewpoint, I don't think we could go with 1 or 3. I think we're going to incur some experiences after the fact that are going to come back to us. It's going to be more so than what number 2 would be.
Well, but in the short term, if you either give them, you say opt in or opt out.
I like that. Okay. I don't have a problem with that either.
Then in the short term, yes, it would cost us a little bit more if somebody opted in. But in the long term, the percentage savings that we would probably realize with regard to our negotiating power with the insurance companies, we would experience some savings.
I agree. If you had an option 4 that was either opt in, opt out, period,
and then
and that goes away after November when we can readdress the whole thing again.
Right. And if the board so wishes to run, in essence, say we want to just run that period and as it is currently and gives people an option to adjust, then that's a decision that the board has to make. But if the board says, well, we'll hedge our bet a little bit and we'll run it through till May 1st, and give people an opportunity to do something different, then we may do that. But and those employees can talk to Tyson about extenuating circumstances beyond their control that has happened to their insurance, and then maybe gives them the opportunity to.
I don't think we need to wait. I think we need to go ahead and.
But if we do it now, if you do it now, you do bring undue hardship onto a certain amount of people.
Well, wait a minute now. Never mind. I don't want to get into that. But I disagree with that statement.
Well, let me clarify that. If you do it now, and you say, right as of today, the cover, we're not reimbursing people for individual coverage that they have got, then that person's budget is impacted, and it's fine. I guess, if that's the way life goes. But nevertheless, it does give someone something to think about, with regard to how it impacts your budget. So, and those individuals just have to deal with that.
I guess that's what I'm getting at is and how we're doing this. Yes, I know that we need to look out for our employees. But our first job is to look out for the county.
That's right. And that's what I'm trying to do with why I'm saying if you do the opt-in or the opt-out, and until federal legislation changes where we can go back to something like this that could save the county money when someone gets an individual policy, we reimburse them up to
An individual policy is not going to come back in. That is, take
Well,
that out of your mind.
That is not what Tyson said. Now, Tyson said that within a congressional hearing, that was brought up to one of, I don't know if it was the authors or somebody who sat on that committee, but they said, but this exact question came up
2 weeks ago.
Right, and they said, what happens when this occurs to employees who are reimbursed for individual claim coverage? And the guy said, I didn't know, I didn't realize that was in there. So, you know, the author, you know, people who wrote the stuff don't even know.
Well,
There's
I
been
know
a lot
this-
of those discoveries, and
Right.
they're not changed yet, so I agree with counsel. That's not, the individual policy is being phased out. I mean, if we read the writing on the wall, that's what's happening.
Well, if you read the writing on the wall, I think we can all agree that the only way that a public utility healthcare works is if everybody uses it. And that's what the government is moving us towards, is health insurance as a public utility.
They're forcing us to do it.
And
It's not a matter of choice.
Exactly. So, and that's a whole other discussion. But either way, you know, whatever the board wants to do, I'm saying that we need to make a motion here, but I think that it's either opt in or opt out, and it strengthens what we have now. That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Harris, Mr. Harris.
Quick, a couple of comments. We don't have a lot of employees that are receiving the cash benefit. In fact, there are very few. The ones who have opted out, for the most part, are part of a group policy, a spouse's policy. And for the most part, it's my opinion, after speaking to many of them, it's because they could not afford family coverage with the county's insurance. But with a group policy with a spouse that worked for the state, in many cases, they could afford the family coverage by opting out of the county health insurance and being reimbursed for the difference for the upgrade in their spouse's policy to cover the family. So these are people, they're a small number of them. I think really, total, we're talking fewer than 20 people that are affected by this opt-out provision. We're talking about people that potentially couldn't afford family coverage if they didn't do what they were doing today, because they couldn't buy it with the county, period. Some number of others, and I don't mind saying publicly, I had a pre-existing condition. I had cancer. Okay, that's why I kept my policy. And it was just interesting that I got here and questioned why we were paying over $600 a month when I was paying $300 for the same coverage with the same company. But it was based on our claims history. We went through extensive studies. The sheriff serves on that same committee with me. And they had to prove to us that's what the problem was, and that's why we're paying such high rates. But there is a very small number who are receiving a cash benefit and not reimbursement to some group policy that fits the federal program. Having said that, I would say there's another option that I only thought of while sitting here. And that can be dangerous. But I would submit to you that you could select option number 2, which fits what the federal government is attempting to do. It fits. Because you would only reimburse those persons who are part of a group plan. That's what the government wants. They want everyone in a group. And then if you want to run the risk and pay a penalty, only pay the penalty on those that currently receive a cash benefit. Because there are only a few, very few. If you're going to run that risk and allow those persons to buy the time to become a part of a group plan. I don't disagree. It's a horrible situation that was created by the so-called Affordable Care Act. We didn't create the problem. And for those persons, the very few that receive a cash benefit, they're in a bad situation because they can't even get into it. They can't do anything right now. They're kind of stuck. So until open enrollment comes for those persons, you know, we can run numbers, but I'm going to suggest to you that they're going to be small numbers. What the penalty might be, as much as I hate to say that, relatively speaking, they will be fairly small numbers. That's another option that you have.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Wade?
Okay, so in adopting, what you're saying is we can adopt option 2. Leave those individuals alone that we're paying the cash benefit to. Does their option change, or do we see something on the horizon that they're gonna have an option come November?
If I were going to consider that, I would only do it for a time certain.
That's what,
Getting them to open enrollment.
that's what I'm saying, you're saying, okay, let's roll the dice on those half a dozen people. I don't know how many it is. You said a few.
It's fewer than half a dozen.
Okay. 3 or 4 or 5 people. Do we run the risk on being in violation on those particular individuals? Basically, we get to pretty well stay doing just what we're doing, other than those being in violation of those 3 or 4.
That's correct. We'd have to change our policy, but essentially we'd continue doing what we're doing.
Right.
For those that we're reimbursing that have family coverage.
Until October, till we get open enrollment, let's do something. Okay. I'm willing to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Counsel? Comments?
There's no gray area, is that what you're saying?
Well, again, whether or not it gets readdressed between now and then, hopefully it will. But even if it's 4, 5, 6 people, and you're in violation per employee at $100 per day, that's $600 per day for whatever length of time. And that's quick math. Then,
Yeah, according to, excuse me, I didn't interrupt. What Counselor, what Tyson Johnson told me is that once you become aware, you're liable. Is that correct?
I think the whole public is aware it's in this room, that's what we're thinking about doing.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So, it's $100 per day per employee who is in violation. But I just can't help but think that if we're aware and you can't turn on a dime, to give a month or 2 to make changes in your coverage so that you can afford it, that there wouldn't be any problem with that, but I could be wrong. So that's all I have to say. But I am in favor of opting opt-out because it does, all of this creates additional work. I understand that healthcare is moving on a fast track towards government control.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Fleming and then Commissioner Sessions.
I hear you saying that you spoke with Mr. Johnson concerning the insurance. We got counsel. He did his check and his findings. I'd much rather go with the findings, and I think, to me, now what fits is best. Because I'm in that category. I opt out of the insurance. I have state insurance. So that fits where we're going, which is option 2. Also, he's telling us where we at, what we're doing. I haven't talked to Mr. Johnson at all. I'm taking basing it solely on what our counsel is telling me.
Mr. Sessions?
I have a question for Randy. Randy, do we have 60% of our employees on the coverage?
Yes.
Are we close to that, or are we?
Oh, we're well over 60%. Yes. Yes, sir. There may be, again, I'm talking about may not be the 12, maybe 12, 15 that have opted out. And
Less than 20.
the majority of those are in a group plan.
I just want to make sure we're getting the best deal we can get from our insurance company.
Gentlemen, I need to know what the wishes of the board are with regard to this issue.
You said altogether there's how many, you said?
There may be a total of 12 to 15 who have opted out, and there are only a few that are receiving a cash benefit. Majority of those 12 to 15 are receiving a reimbursement because they're a part of a group plan with a spouse or something. Let me just say from a practical standpoint, from a day-to-day operation standpoint, and how this is handled in finance. If you go with number 2, we're going to continue doing what we've been doing. With one exception. We have the few that are receiving the cash benefit. That would change if you went with number 2. I don't know how to reconcile that. But right now, the paperwork that is currently occurring associated with that would change if we go with another option, because then you would incur all these other expenses, the deductions and all the other benefits that would be associated with it.
If we adopted, Mr. Chairman had offered do we have to implement it next week? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, that's my question, and
I mean, what if we was a
anybody-
implemented in April?
Well,
I don't know, I mean,
that was the thing, is
there's an administrative issue here, couldn't we claim to the government that we have,
you can't turn
we're
it
not
back.
staff, we're working on that.
Well, that's what, that was what I put forward, was maybe we make it effective, we keep going the way we're going till May 1st, at which time we implement whatever policy that we opt to elect here today.
Well, I'm prepared to go ahead and make a motion unless somebody wants to put an extension on it, an effective date.
Let me say, it's gonna take 2 weeks for it to become effective, because we don't have the resolution. I wasn't gonna bring a resolution in here until I knew what needed to be on the resolution. So it's gonna take 2 weeks.
We do it by the next meeting.
Do we have the next meeting?
Yeah, next week I would have to draft a resolution. So it'll be at least 2 weeks before the board can entertain that.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of option 2.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wainwright, seconded by Commissioner Fleming. Any further discussion? The only thing that I would offer is that we're saying that we're going to implement option 2, and now we're saying we're going to implement it at the next meeting.
He's gonna bring back a resolution, the language of what we've just,
Right, correct.
and then we can fudge around with the dates then.
You can have an effective date added to the resolution.
I don't like it either. I really don't, but I mean, listen, I've dealt with Department of Labor and Homeland Security last year, and I've done I got hair left, but I mean, it feels like it's all gone. Anyway,
I think in order to maintain a healthy, insured pool, we should do the opt-in, opt-out thing. I don't know that, that's just based on conversations that I've had with experts in the industry. That's what I'm getting for. There's a motion and a second on the table, as the record reflects. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. All right, moving back to our agenda, we gotta go back up to the item number 6 at 6:30 p.m. and soon thereafter. Hold on just a second. Okay, now you can speak.
There is a product that Tyson and I sat in a meeting on last week. He is trying to thoroughly evaluate that, run it by a lot of other insurance professionals, and ultimately we'll sit down with Mr. Pavad. If this product, and it isn't a different type of insurance, but it's a product that complements insurance, maybe the best way to say it. If it passes legal muster, it may be an opportunity for us to incorporate this into benefits offered to county employees that would actually enable them to realize, I'm just going to use a number, maybe a couple $100 per month or more, that would have to stay in the insurance arena or the healthcare arena. It might help employees, and it's a product that is tax-free. But, and I only wanted to share that because I don't want this to sound, everyone walk away with doom and gloom on their minds right now. I mean, this affordable care thing has just gotten out of control. Clearly it isn't affordable for a lot of people. It's caused all manner of turmoil, and I hate it, I really do. But I want you to know that your staff is trying to find as many options as we can bring to the table that will help those that have to bear the cost of this. So I'm hoping to bring this product to you as soon as I think that it's ready to be considered. And Mr. Pavad will participate in that evaluation as well. It just isn't ready yet, but it could be in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 7:11. 7:11. We'll turn our attention now to Ken Williams, Finance Director.
Good evening. We have a budget amendment here to take $29,000 out of the contingency account in the general fund, which brings the contingency account down to $84,938. The $29,000 will be transferred to the water treatment plant fund, which is a new fund that was established for the operating expenses of the new water treatment plant. So it's going $29,000 to revenue in that fund and $29,000 for appropriations, which is mainly professional services. This is based on the budget amounts that we received.
Mr. Williams, could you restate that balance in the contingency again?
$84,938 after the $29,000 was taken out.
$84,938.
And when do we anticipate receiving funds back from the sheriff? Do you know?
I'm not sure when they're going to be received, but they'll have to be reallocated, I guess, by the board to whatever purposes they want to spend.
Any other questions of Mr. Williams by the board? Hearing none, what are the wishes of the board?
Is this a public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry, is this a public hearing? It doesn't say that. Oh, yeah, that's it. Sorry. I'll now open the floor as a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to the matter, please come forward to the podium. Hearing none. Are there any comments from the board? I just need one thing.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion to approve made by Commissioner Wainwright, seconded by Commissioner Gamble. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Harris?
could I make a brief comment?
Sure.
This, essentially a line item, commissioners, it'll be a line item set up as, we will ultimately treat the water plant as an enterprise fund, standalone business. We know that we're gonna have to make an investment, we knew that when we started, but fortunately we didn't have to make a big investment in the construction facility. It's about a $3 million grant that we got, CDBG grant that funded the construction of the water plant. As you know, we are applying for another grant, actually a House appropriation in the Senate as well, hoping to extend the water main back to the interchange of I-10 and US 90. Clearly, our hope is that businesses continue to move in out there, and ultimately, one day we hope to see real revenues rolling in. We have other companies that Mr. Jackson and myself have been speaking to. There are companies that we know plan to locate out there now. They will be customers as well. So we will generate some revenue. For now, these are the expenses associated with your actions. Last couple of meetings where we actually had to hire the operator. We have some chemicals to run that facility. That's what these expenses
Thank you, Mr. Harris. There's a motion and a second on the floor as the record reflects. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. Moving back down to item number 9 under general business on your agenda. It says discuss with possible board action advertising for requests for proposals for administrative services associated with community development block grant housing, rehabilitation, and grant application for the center. Once again, Randy Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, Mr. Massey and I met with Patrick Howard, the administrator, and of the CDBG funds, the application. Had a long conversation with him about a week ago. His recommendation, and my recommendation as well, I've experienced this before, is that we undertake an RFP, request proposals from entities that are in the business of applying for the CDBG grant for housing rehabilitation. Those same companies that handle the application are in the business, the ones that we will be appealing to, would also be in the business of administering the program if we are awarded the grant. There's quite an extensive program that has to be put in place, ultimately evaluated and considered by the board, if approved, that will enable us to spend those funds rehabilitating some homes in Swanee County. So it is our recommendation that we undertake this RFP and hire someone to handle both of those services.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any questions from the board regarding this or comments? Hearing none, what are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Commissioner Gamble. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Seconded by Commissioner Sessions. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item number 10 on our agenda is additional agenda items. I have 2 additional agenda items, gentlemen. Are there any other items that any commissioner would want to add? Hearing none, I'll read the 2 that I have into the record. Number 1 is appointment of 1 commissioner to serve on the North Florida Economic Development Partnership. And item number 2, approval of 2014-2015 Small County Consolidated Solid Waste Grant Agreement. Gentlemen, you have your supporting documentation there. For that, the NFEDP, you've all received emails from and are familiar with that organization. Alvin Jackson is currently serving as 1 position on that board. And the way I've been briefed on this is I have to make an appointment of 1 other commissioner to serve on that board. And it is my selection that Commissioner Ricky Gamble should serve on that. And if the board doesn't have a problem with that, then that's the way it will stay. Mr. Gamble, do you accept?
Yeah, good.
I applaud that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, approval of 2014-2015 Small County Consolidated Solid Waste Grant Agreement. Randy Harris, County Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we apply for this grant annually. This year, it would represent $90,909 in reimbursement to the County Solid Waste Fund if approved by the board. This is a little bit late in the year. Typically, these things occur earlier in the year, but they just got the agreement to us.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. What are the wishes of the board?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion to approve made by Commissioner Fleming, seconded by Commissioner Gamble. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to item number 11, public concerns and comments. I only have one. It's Mr. Hancock. I'll allow a discussion of a previous board action. I just ask on these public comments and concerns, if you be more specific from this point on, if you're very, very general in what you, like say, just general business or something like that, I may, from this point on, not grant that request. So just try to be more specific in your brief description of the discussion about it. Let's give our attention to Mr. Hancock.
I've got some stuff I would like to pass out. Get my